Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
Let's do this thing.
We're going to swing it right back to the college football playoff because the rankings
Ooh.
do come out tonight. Where will Notre Dame be ranked when the first college football playoff rankings come out?
Yeah, so I'll kind of give you my 1 through 10. I think that's
Oh,
where.
I knew it. Okay. All right. I had a feeling that you were going to not just give me Notre Dame, but you were going to give me the whole thing. So, okay.
Well, you need context.
Now you're not projecting what you think they're going to be at the end of the season. This is what you think it's going to look like when the rankings come out tonight, right?
That is correct. I think.
Okay.
Or you know what? I'm going to start backwards at 10 because I think that's going to be closer to
Well, there
where
are
Notre
12
Dame
teams.
is.
There are 12 teams, so you should probably start at number 12.
Probably start at number 12. I'm going to go with Boise State at number 12.
Okay.
I'm going to go with
Now hold it. Do you think that Boise State actually shows up that high just because they are the highest ranked group of 5?
Yes, I think that the committee would do it if the season ended today. This is what the 12-team playoff would look like. That's the format that I am assuming.
So even though Boise State, like in one poll they're 12 this week, and the other poll they're 14. So you're going to go Boise State at number 12. Okay.
Boise State at number 12, Texas A&M at number 11, BYU at number 10, Notre Dame at 9, IU at 8, Penn State at 7, Tennessee at 6, Texas at 5, Ohio State at 4, Georgia at 3, Miami at 2, and Oregon at 1 is my final 12 prediction right there.
So where did you have Miami?
2.
Oh, so you got Miami at 2 and then Oregon at number 1. So you think
correct?
You think Miami's going to be that high simply?
I mean, they're undefeated in a power conference. They have to be ahead of teams that have one loss. If IU is ahead of Notre Dame, then Miami has to be ahead of one loss Ohio State as well. Is my rationale.
I don't completely disagree with that. I think Notre Dame is going to be the most interesting case study, I think, when this first ranking comes out, because number one, the win against Texas A&M lost some luster because they got knocked off, of course, by South Carolina, and they still, of any of these teams who are in the running, have the worst loss because of Northern Illinois. And I think that is going to make them, like, where exactly the committee puts them is going to be the most interesting question because of that. Because, I mean, obviously you have other one-loss teams in there, but Ohio State's loss is to Oregon. Georgia's loss is to Alabama, which, even though, not as great, because Alabama's lost a couple of times, but go on down the line. Did I already say Ohio State? Yeah. Tennessee's loss is to Arkansas. So not quite as bad as Notre Dame's, but not a great loss nonetheless. Penn State's loss is to Ohio State, So I think ultimately Notre Dame is going to end up at number 10. I think the committee is going to put both Indiana and BYU ahead of Notre Dame. I could be wrong, but they're both undefeated. And, like what you were just talking about with Miami, you're still talking about, Power 4 conferences, both of them undefeated. So by definition, neither one of them has a bad loss. Neither one of them have as good a win as Notre Dame has, but they also don't have a loss. And so I think that they're both going to end up ahead of Notre Dame, and I think Notre Dame is going to be number 10 when it comes out tonight. Corey is saying 8th. DK is saying 9th.
I'm writing mine down right now so I can compare and contrast.
Who is Monty? I have no idea who you're talking about, Stymie. I'm convinced Notre Dame doesn't get it. I mean, come on. You have to look at this rationally, right? Like like, one, I don't know who Monty is, whoever Stymie was talking about. And two, I think because of that NIU loss, they're going to be a little bit lower. You know, like you can justify it right now, and maybe this is how it plays out. You know, Ryan is saying quality of wins over quality of losses. You know, if that's how you want to see
Can't
it,
lose when
that's
you're
how
not
you'll
playing
say it.
anyone.
But yeah, well, you can't lose if you're not playing anyone. I mean, so how does that justify Notre Dame losing to Northern Illinois? You know,
I don't say it justifies it. I'm just saying that like there's nothing on IU's resume that's more impressive than what Notre Dame has done. I just don't know if Notre Dame's wins can outweigh their loss. Essentially, that's going to be the tipping point in the scale, and that's to me what I want to. I don't care. I mean, I do. I don't care where Notre Dame falls in this ranking, but I do care where they fall, so I can get an understanding of what's being considered more the quality of the wins or the severity of that one loss.
Yeah. I do think they could be as high as 8th. 8 is their ceiling to me. 8, 9, 10. You know, that's a cop out. I'm going with 10 just because I don't know how the committee is going to view the Northern Illinois loss. And again, the Texas A&M win is still good, but it's not as good as it was a week ago because of them losing to South Carolina. And those are the two things that the committee is going to have to weigh. And the fact that you do have all these unbeaten teams up at the top of their power conferences right now.
Speaking of South Carolina, did you see the what Beamer did in the locker room after the game? I thought that was pretty fun.
I didn't see that.
It was his wife's birthday was coming up, and he basically picked like this old school kind of like R&B throwback song that the players are always singing at practice, and he got all of them to start singing it in the middle of the locker room, and she was like standing inside them in the circle. It was pretty cool, especially after a win against Texas A&M.
Yeah. I'll have to see if I can find that. I hadn't seen that. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Marcus Freeman says Jordan Botelho plans to return to Notre Dame next year.
Oh, it's a great sign to me. Considering a guy that who I feel like we've been waiting for them to kind of take off, right? To have that kind of signature year to stand out and potentially have, some draft to end up on some people's draft radars, best case scenario. A guy who I would say has, largely, not largely, he's just kind of, he's underachieved and not really he hasn't reached his full potential. And I thought he was kind of tapping into that full potential this season, came back in really good shape, showed an understanding of the defense, was playing with a high motor, just doing all the things that you want to. And it was really unfortunate as soon as things started to click for him that he got injured. So, I think it's a great sign for Botelho. To me, it shows that he's mentally there, right? Like after an injury like that and kind of being, a guy who's been in the college system for like 5 or 6 seasons now, you can get mentally drained and worn down by that. So I think it's a great sign that he's coming back.
And I think it's great for him because I do think that there is, still a lot of professional potential for a guy like Jordan Botelho. And it's obviously great for the team in terms of depth. And maybe this turns into, you don't need to go to the transfer portal to find another defensive end next year when you look at everything they're going to be, having coming back. Now, this is obviously assuming that Botelho and Traore both recover, on schedule from their knee injuries. But you've got those two guys. Now you've already got Josh Burnham. You've still got Junior Tuihalamaka. You've got Logan Thomas, who's made some contributions already as a freshman, who you expect to just continue to get bigger and stronger and better next year. And of course, you got Bryce Young on the other side as well. I think I already said Josh Burnham in there. So like that's 6 guys right there. So like, could you potentially, with a bigger guy like Botelho, maybe even see him just go to the other side because you've got, all these other quick twitch guys who can help you out at Viper as well. So I think it's just great for the shape of the room, for those, defensive end spots, and for Botelho, who, as you said, he was coming into his own this year. And it it stunk to see him have to see his season end with what he was doing, and Traore in that mix as well. But Traore obviously with about a lot of eligibility remaining, so good shape for that room coming up next year. So Jesse, would you rather have a coach like Marcus Freeman, who's shown he can win big games, but it also has shown that he is prone to some upset losses, as we were just talking about, Northern Illinois under his belt, or a guy like James Franklin, who has 11 more years of experience, but can't win the games that matter?
Well, couldn't we just substitute James Franklin and Brian Kelly for each other in this question?
I mean, I think it's been pretty well established that people would take Marcus Freeman over Brian Kelly at this point, right?
Oh yeah, and I guess what I'm getting at is I would 100% take Marcus Freeman over James Franklin over Brian Kelly, because I can live with not as much as not as much as I could 2-3 years ago. I can live with these bumps and bruises that he's taking along the way. The Stanford, the Marshalls, the NIUs to an extent, right? Like they have to stop. Don't get me wrong, but since he's so early in his head coaching career, I would much rather take a 10-2 season, 11-1 season where I'm beating Texas A&M, I'm beating Louisville, I'm beating USC, assuming USC was going to be good this season, and drop a random dud against Northern Illinois, than beat everyone I'm supposed to and not beat the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Michigan States of the world. The games that you really should be judged by, really who your fans judge you by the most, and ultimately, if you want to get anywhere on a national level, games you have to win. And Penn State is just constantly stuck in this, rotation or circle of life where it's just the same thing every year. It's 10-2, 11-1 Penn State. They beat everyone they're supposed to. They lose to the teams that they're supposed to. They compete in a bowl game because, their whole roster is playing essentially because of, James Franklin. I think he gets his guys to ultimately kind of buy in. And they win these kind of close or lose close New Year's Six games, and we repeat the cycle every year. But in that cycle, there's never a chance at a national championship. And to me, that's got to be the detriment deciding factor.
Yeah, because you can go to this whole, well, if over the last however many years, Franklin and Penn State, they would have been in the playoff. Look, he's 1-7 at home against top 10 teams. He's 6-10 against ranked teams at home. He's 1-9 against teams in the top 5, most of them being Ohio State. And of course, he's won just once in 11 tries against Penn State. John went against the grain with this one. He says he'd take Franklin because of the fact that he wins games that he's supposed to win. But there is something to that, and like, I think, Josh just put it up there. And Ryan just said, Josh said, who would you rather have, Brian Kelly or Franklin? Like, we've already seen Brian Kelly. It's probably the better question at this point. We've already seen Brian Kelly. The common denominator between the two that really turned me off the most about both of them is they're both completely willing to throw anyone and everyone under the bus. Like when it serves, Franklin is always just whining out loud. He was talking the other day about, we don't have enough. We got to go dig, we got to dig deeper into the pot. We got to have more NIL so we can compete with Ohio State and all this stuff. It's like, are you telling me that Penn State doesn't have enough resources? First, he's complaining about the airport so they can fly out to USC. It was a close game. They still beat USC. It's just too much. I think I think that Franklin is kind of in a place similar to where Kelly was when he was at Notre Dame, in terms of,
he's at his ceiling.
Yeah. Has he reached his ceiling? I think that he probably has. And Marcus Freeman is nowhere close to his ceiling because, the talent is showing up in droves right now, especially on the defensive side of the ball with all these young guys who have had the opportunity to play. And as they continue to stack more talent, I think that Marcus Freeman's ceiling is still well down the road. James Franklin has already arrived there, and he's knocking his head on it right now.
Well, what is the one thing that we heard Penn State whine and cry about for the longest time in comparison to Ohio State and maybe Michigan? They can't get the quarterback, right? Like the quarterback is what's been holding them back. They have these dominant defenses. They just need a quarterback. A quarterback would solve all their issues. Well, I got news for you. It's year 2 of Drew Aller. He's a 5-star recruit. Same result. Same result, James Franklin. So what is it? At the end of the day, what's the one thing that stayed consistent, but you kept changing everything else? The head coach position. And so I just feel like you alluded to not too long ago, James Franklin has unfortunately hit his ceiling. And not only that, but I feel like he's mentally kind of placed this block in front of himself as well, where he himself can't get over the Ohio State hurdle.
Well, I mean,
he himself can't get over the Michigan hurdle. So how can you expect your team to do that when you mentally or you can't get past this barrier yourself?
If they don't have the pick 6, and if Will Howard doesn't have that fumble going into the end zone, it's a much more lopsided game than what the final score actually dictated. Like that was a big momentum play with that pick 6 early on, but what did Penn State do after that? And then the goal line situation, they run the running back up the middle 3 times before throwing on 4th down, and then it's incomplete. I mean, that's all stuff that's on the head coach. And Ryan is saying Aller is good against the average teams, and that's right, just like Penn State is good against the average teams, because 90% of the Big Ten is average teams. I mean, it's what you're ripping Indiana for, because they haven't played anybody. They don't even have to play Penn State and Indiana don't play each other this year. Watching that game, the skill talent, like besides Aller, shouldn't Penn State have a lot more like high-end skill talent on that roster than what they have? They don't have it.
Can I ask you a question as well? Did you get to watch much of Penn State, Ohio State this weekend? Did you watch, how much would you say you watched of that game?
I mean, I watched a good deal of it. I'm trying to think of what happened in the afternoon.
So I made the claim that it was a sloppy game, and I got ripped to, of course, being in Ohio State country, I got ripped to shreds for saying that it was a sloppy game. But to me, 3 turnovers inside the 5-yard line is a sloppy game. I don't know about you, but a fumble, touchback, a couple turnovers on down. I mean, Penn State had 1st and goal from the 3 and couldn't get in, and ended up going for it and I think they threw an interception too at one point in the red zone. So you had a touchback, an interception, a turnover, and that that's sloppy football to me. And a lot of people are like, oh well, that's what happens when 2 powerhouse schools get together and play, like Penn State, Ohio State. You wouldn't know about that because that's a big matchup. And it's like, okay, but it still wasn't refined football. So I don't know. To me, for how much hype that was around the game, I felt like there was a lot of sloppiness.
Could have been a little better. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's all I was. I always like to get other people's opinions on things when I'm kind of coming out of left field. Again, another thing that happened over the weekend that got blown out of proportion that I wasn't necessarily as overly impressed with, Saquon Barkley hurdle. A backwards hurdle is a hurdle. It doesn't matter what direction you're facing. You're just hurdling. It's whether or not you can see the defender or not. Was it an extremely athletic play? Sure, but it's still a hurdle at the end of the day.
Did somebody try to tell you that wasn't a hurdle or what?
No, they're just trying to make it seem like it's this extreme juke move that no one's ever seen. Yes, extremely athletic. I cannot do it myself.
Oh, you're cutting against the grain is what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, I'm cutting against the grain because, again, it was impressive, but a hurdle is a hurdle no matter what direction you're facing. It's not like he changed or reinvented the move. It's just he happened to be facing backwards instead of forward. So, again, I could go on about this for a while.
What about the game time itself? Because Penn State fans weren't happy about big noon kickoff and not being in prime time. Do they have a beef? Which would you prefer? You're hosting Ohio State. You want noon or you want primetime kickoff?
Me personally, I want primetime, but Ohio State, Penn State fans can't gripe because they're part of the Big Ten. And what does the Big Ten want? They want the Big Ten or big noon kickoff. They want, they want all of the publicity to be on them. And so, I get it while they're doing it at noon, but at the same time, it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I don't like noon games. Like if I'm sitting at home and I'm watching a game that my team is not involved in, especially like that one. I loved having Penn State, Ohio State on at noon, so I could actually sit there and watch it, and I don't have to, worry about staying up till midnight and trying to watch the whole thing. So I liked it, and look, remember when all these TV contracts came out a year ago, all these Big Ten teams were complaining because of the fact, like the NBC primetime deal. Oh, we've got to play night games in November. And it's like, okay, well, you don't have a night game, you get a noon game instead. So I love having a big game on at noon, just, like kick back and watch
Divides
it
the
for
day
3.5 hours in the afternoon. You still got a lot of stuff, that you can do later on in the day. Fill in the blank. Olivia Miles turning in a triple-double in her first game back after missing all of last season with injury is blank.
Just what the doctor ordered, baby. After coming off of the injury that left her sidelined all last season, first full game back. What more could you ask for than the doctor cooking up a triple-double in the first game back? And to me, getting a triple-double is the most electric thing that you can do in basketball. I think it's the definition of being the most well-rounded or the best player on the court, because not only do you know how to score, but you can assist your teammates in scoring. You can facilitate the scoring of the team. And then also, with the rebounds, you are gaining back possession. You are not allowing the other team to get second chance points or to continue possession. And so to me, again, the triple-double is the most valuable stat in the game because of how it affects the rest of the team. It's one of the most selfless stats in the entire game, in my opinion.
And to me, it's confirmation. Olivia Miles, still a superstar. I don't think there is any doubt about that. I thought she was going to have a triple. I thought she might have a triple-double by halftime. The way, I'm sitting there looking at the stats and, like the way things were shaping up. She didn't quite get there by halftime, but she did by the end of the game. And quite honestly, she should have had a few more assists, or, her teammates missed a few bunnies, but, maybe that kind of happens when you're, depleted a little bit and everyone's a little bit more fatigued than normal. And we'll get to that here in just a minute. But, just fantastic. And like to see the confidence that she has, because when these players come back, she obviously sat out all of last season, not wearing a knee brace, complete confidence in that knee. And I think that that's what she needed, just to have that time to make sure, that was there. And there's just so much chemistry already with the team and everybody around her. And, all of her teammates have talked about you got to be ready for Olivia Miles to pass at any time. And you saw some of the, and there were a couple. There was like the first pass that she had, she was looking for Hannah Hidalgo over on the wing, and I think it got deflected out of bounds. I initially thought that maybe she sailed it a little bit, but I mean, some of those no-look passes and just some of the things that she did, just amazing. And she actually started the game with a 3-pointer as well. And I think that that's a part of her game, that's still kind of coming along. But I did see she is the first player, Division I men's or women's basketball, as well as either NBA or WNBA, to miss an entire season and then come back and have a 20-point triple-double in their first game back from injury. So, like, that is pretty amazing. And she's got 4 career triple-doubles now, the most in Notre Dame history and the second most in ACC history as well. So, talk about welcome back, Olivia Miles. It was great to see last night in that blowout win over Mercyhurst. So a lot of people, of course, as Decaf says, on pins and needles with all the injuries on the women's team. What gives? Well, again, like sometimes injuries happen, but here is kind of the like where they are. Sonia Citron sat last night. She's got the sore ankle, and they're very hopeful that she is going to be back very soon. Like, I can't say how soon because there's just certain stuff that I'm not allowed to say, but very soon would be kind of how I would term it. So look forward to having her back. There was no reason either for the exhibition last week or Mercyhurst last night. Like when you look at the fact that they scored over almost 210 combined points in those games, there was no reason to push Sonia Citron out there with a sore ankle, but they expect to have her back very soon. So that'll be like another cog in this machine. It's just it's going to be running pretty well. What are you sighing at?
Well, I don't want to say this out loud, but I have a long standing theory or conspiracy maybe that it always feels like for example, NFL, it feels like as soon as you get someone back healthy,
something happens to somebody else.
Something else happens, right? You're like, I remember, and maybe this is, I just have, scarred memories, but it felt like one of the seasons the Cowboys were constantly hurt, right? And every time we were like, oh, just can't wait to get this guy back. And then that guy gets back, and then another starter gets hurt, right? It just feels like it's this revolving door of people coming in and out. I just hope and pray that they can be full strength, full health, and all be on the court at the same time, because that's when it's going to be that's when they're going to be at their best, obviously.
Yeah. DJ says back for USC. I would say probably even sooner than that, DJ. But again, I can't be any more specific than that. Now, as for Maddie Westbeld, they're talking about probably sometime in December. It is still a ways off, but they're hoping as she recovers from that foot injury to get her back around, ACC play starts early in December because they go to Syracuse. I wouldn't look for that to happen, but maybe later in December, I think is probably, and again, it's like there was a, foot surgery and all that kind of stuff involved with Maddie Westbeld. So they're not going to push her back any sooner than they have to, but it sounded like, that's kind of the case there. The good news for Liza Carlin, who was injured in the first half of the exhibition game last week. She was in a walking boot last night on the bench. She's going to be out a while, but it is more weeks as opposed to months, is what I was told with her. Weeks as opposed to months. So they do expect to get Liza Carlin back as well. No definitive timeline on that. So, I mean, it's good news. And then Emma Risch came back last night. She's a 3-point shooter, didn't shoot the lights out, but I mean, look, she looked rusty, like someone who missed almost all of her freshman season last year after having hip surgery. The thing for her is just keep shooting, and eventually they're going to start going down. It's going to be good. And then you get Citron back, so they'll get some 3-point shooting there, and both Hidalgo and Olivia Miles can shoot the three as well. So I think that perimeter game is going to kind of round into form. And, and it's also important to remember that both Maddie Westbeld and Liza Carlin can both shoot threes as well. And they don't have, obviously, either one of them right now. So it's all very good. All very good. I don't know. Anything else, Jesse, on the women's basketball before we roll on?
Just health. That's going to be their limiting factor this season. I think they're going to gain pieces as they go. And so that's going to be on Neil Ivey to kind of, work on those rotations, work on getting those minutes back in and getting those players kind of ramped up, to full time, and still keeping that chemistry on the court, because it's not time to just experiment. There's still games you have to win. There's still conference games. Like, everything matters. And so that's going to be the biggest hurdle, I think, for Neil Ivey this season, is as she starts to gain full health as the season goes on, how is she rotating those minutes, incorporating those minutes, and getting everone kind of fed, essentially, right? And getting
that'll be a good problem to have when it actually happens.
Yeah, instead of trying to figure out how you're going to work with a 5 to 6 girl rotation, having 8 players is such a key difference.
No, absolutely. And I mean, Sarah Cernugal, the former walk-on, was playing in the first half last night, which is maybe the first time, maybe the second or third time, actually, now that I think about it, in the last couple of years that has happened. That might have happened once or twice in the first half last year. Seemed like late in the first half that might have happened, but like they had 7 available players last night, so it's a little bit tough when you're forced into that. But a lot of good things to come, and hopefully they just all keep getting healthier, and it's going to look that much better. It's like DJ was talking about USC, and that is 18 days from now, the trip to Los Angeles. Purdue this weekend, James Madison here in South Bend, and then out to Lafayette in Easton, Pennsylvania, rather. Never been there before, but we're going there in a couple of weeks on the 17th. Okay, so Monday Night Football last night. Tampa Bay head coach Todd Bowles played for overtime, kicked the extra point rather than going for 2 and trying to win at the end of regulation in Kansas City. Do you buy or sell the move?
So I'm really glad you asked this question because I have a fun backstory that goes along with it. So,
okay, all right.
Saturday evening, at some point on Saturday, we got up, we went to yoga in the morning, we went and got breakfast and kind of walked around some shops, and then we came back home and I watched Ohio State and Michigan as much as I could, Ohio State and Penn State, and then at like 5:00 Saturday evening, right at sunset, we had another round of engagement photos at this park that's nearby our house. But and then afterwards, Naomi was feeling good, and she's like, "Let's just stay out and go to this wine bar." So we're sitting down.
Is this going somewhere, counselor? Is this going to lead somewhere? Okay.
Can I get more than 30 seconds?
I'm going to bring in cross-examination here in a minute.
So we're at this wine bar, and we're sipping on wine, and this place now put in a TV so all the guys can sit in there and watch football. So we're in there watching football, and I don't know if this was the wine talking because I know Naomi doesn't really care at the end of the day, but I was telling her, so we're watching some close football games. I go, you know what? If I were a head coach and I was in one of these games where I'm undermatched, I know I don't have the talent level as, Georgia, Ohio State of the worlds. I'm in a close dogfight at the end. I, as a head coach, if I tied it up, if I got that possession where I need to kick the extra point or go for 2, as the underman coach, as the under-talented team, why not take fate into your own hands and say, you know what? I have more faith statistically that we can convert 1 2-yard play than playing an entire overtime with a team on the road is more talented to you than you. You're fortunate to be in this close of a game. And so, again, I don't know if the wine was talking. I don't know what was going on. But I literally had this full-on conversation with Naomi. I know she doesn't care. But I said, if I were the head coach, I'm going for 2 because statistically, I believe in my team that we can convert 1 play compared to playing an entire overtime period with a team that I know is far better than me. So to answer your question, I am taking the bull by the horns, and I'm going for 2. And I am more confident in that 2-yard play than I am in playing an entire overtime. So I'm going for it. I'm putting fate in my team and throwing out a play. And this goes back to another theory I have. You should always have a Rolodex of 2 to 3 yard plays that you've never shown before.
Right.
And so if you are prepared for this situation, statistically, you are better off to go for 2 than try to play an entire overtime period with a team you don't match up with.
That's exactly right. At the end of the day, Tampa Bay is a 500 team, and the Kansas City Chiefs remain undefeated. Now, the Chiefs haven't necessarily dominated everybody. They've won a lot of close games.
Undefeated.
But they're undefeated because they are the defending champs, and you're playing them on the road. And I absolutely agree with what you're saying. You got to go for it in that situation because, at the very least, no one on your team, I don't think anyone on your team, you're at the end of, if you don't get it, I don't think your guys are going to be mad at you for saying, I've got faith in you. Let's go win the damn game.
That's what I mean.
I don't think anyone's going to be mad at you in that situation. Anyone on your roster, if anything, it helps you in the locker room. I think you should probably log out and come back in again. Just your technology remains undefeated tonight. So.
I'm having a great day. I just plugged in my charger. Maybe that's what was steering all of this.
You just plugged in your charger. You mean
Correct.
you plugged in your computer to the charger?
Yeah, I plugged the charger into the computer.
Well, it did stop blinking. Maybe that's it. Was your battery about to run out?
Says it was on 50%, but it was definitely huffing. So I hope that the continuous power supply fixed all of our issues.
I think you're huffing. You're huffing something over there in Cleveland. I don't know what is going on tonight. Go for it. Interesting, though, that you remember the whole you're down by 14 points. Do you go for two? That Marcus
I've not
Freeman
bought in
got
on that
sucked
one.
Into.
I'm not bought in on that one.
Our team decided to go for two the other day, and they actually got the two. But, of course, it didn't matter. And it probably didn't matter to anybody except the people out in Vegas because it ended up being a 6-point game instead of a 7-point game. So, but they went for two, and they got it when they were down by 14. Speaking of which, today is the NFL trade deadline. I saved this one for the very end. Cowboys traded a 4th-round pick for Carolina receiver Jonathan Mingo. Ate your baby. At the same time, they placed Dak Prescott on IR, the hamstring injury. Do you buy or sell the Cowboys being buyers instead of sellers on today's trade deadline?
You know what? I am surprised you're wasting my time. You're wasting everyone else's time by putting this question in here. Because here's what I'm going to tell you: I sell everything. I am
sell it all. I'm selling this season right now.
I am sold on this season. I am sold on Jerry Jones. I hope Dak Prescott just goes to IR for the rest of the season. He's got nothing to do. What are you going to do? Get out there and get more hurt? Obviously, Jerry Jones doesn't care about putting a roster out there that utilizes your skills or gives you the best chance after making you the most paid quarterback in the league. There's so many more holes on this roster than Jonathan Mingo at wide receiver. And not only that, but Deontay Johnson, the better wide receiver, went for less last week. And you made a public appearance saying, well, where do these players come from? You think they just show up out of nowhere? You let Deontay Johnson go for a 5th and 6th swap. Yet you're out here trading another 4th-round pick like you did for Trey Lance last year for Mingo, a guy you can't even catch the ball half the time. It's so stupid.
But they liked him. They liked him when they were evaluating him in the draft, Jesse. They liked him.
But now Jerry Jones.
This is Jerry Jones putting more stock in his own evaluation than anything else.
Well, now he gets to stand up on the pedestal, go on all these radio shows and say, oh,
we tried.
I did something. I'm all in. I went out and got a wide receiver.
I got
the day after Dak goes to IR. What literal sense does that make? Why don't you find a defensive tackle who can stop someone from gouging you in the run game the entire time? How about that, Jerry Jones?
That's what happens when you draft another Michigan man in the 1st round on the defensive line last year.
You know what? Jerry Jones is just senile, and there's a saying, kill a bird, kill a bird with a stone or whatever. I wish they could kill 3 birds with 1 stone: the president, the owner, and the GM.
I tell you what, a couple weeks ago, I was upset that it's like, I've got all these basketball conflicts. I'm not going to be able to watch the Cowboys on Sundays in November.
Cares?
I'm not very upset about it right now. This just gives me an excuse not to have to watch the garbage. Look, Jerry Jones builds his team by using the draft predominantly. He leans heavily on the draft because, again, he puts more stock in what he considers to be his own draft evaluations, his people as well. But ultimately, at the end of the day, he thinks that, it's his evaluations that are making or breaking this whole thing. He builds his team predominantly by using the draft and by re-signing his best players. That's why they never go out and invest that heavily in free agency. But if that is your plan, you cannot give up 4th-round picks for backup wide receivers, regardless of what you thought about this guy a couple of years ago when he was coming out of college in the draft. They got a 5th-round pick back in exchange for Amari Cooper a few years ago. So they're giving up more to get this guy than what they got for Amari Cooper, who was far better at the time. The Chiefs used a 5th-round pick to get DeAndre Hopkins.
Scored
the Cowboys,
2 touchdowns last
yeah,
night.
the Cowboys, again, like because of where the roster is, they are relying on 4th-round picks to turn these guys into starters. They traded a 4th-round pick to get Trey Lance, who's a 3rd-string quarterback. They used a 4th-round pick to get Maris Leofau, who's a big contributor on defense. This is just more. It's just more bad
Insanity.
roster building. Yeah, more bad roster building by Jerry Jones is what it is.
I'm going to put it like this. I know this is the last question of the show. My current state of Cowboys fandom can be summed up. I willingly decided to go watch the Browns and Chargers with Naomi at the Browns game in stadium this weekend.
And you still watch the Cowboys.
Rather than watch the Cowboys and Falcons. I watched some moments here and there. Like I was watching the score on the
here
ESPN
and there.
app.
Every time something happened, I got a text from you right away.
I was tracking it.
Okay.
Pulled up some few plays here and there when I thought there was a chance. And then, again, I would rather watch the Browns not score any points offensively than watch the Cowboys. And I think that's a sad state of affairs.
Whew, man. That's just brutal. I was starting to wonder if you were even watching the Browns game because, you know, again, like every time something happened during the Cowboys, like, you know, and again, just going back, like you're giving up a 4th-round pick to get a receiver. You're going to have Cooper Rush probably starting for at least the next 3 games, if not the next month.
It's probably
like
4.
The season is over now.
And you're wasting a pick on Jonathan Mingo.
You need to be trading away so you can get more draft picks. They never end up with a surplus of picks. You know, it's just, it is what it is. TD4ND says time to jump on the Bears wagon. I tell you what, I was trying to convince my daughter this weekend that we all just need to jump on the Lions bandwagon, DK. So it is it's too late for that now because they're already doing good. And I wish that I had done that about a year and a half ago. I should have bought all the stock in the Lions and just went for it.
I would root for the Lions if it weren't people like Sean Koski and DK. I want to root for the Lions so bad.
I know.
But there are people like DK and my good friend Sean Koski who are I cannot be a fan of anything Detroit.
Matt's chipping in $5. Thanks for that super chat, Matt, for the new laptop fund. Shannon wants to know the dude on my shirt. This is the boss, Bruce Springsteen.
Is it a concert shirt?
It is. It's from. I got it at last year's tour when they were at Wrigley Field, but it is the Born in the USA tour shirt from.
You know what, DK? I've now that I've given up on the Cowboys, hockey season just started, right? Let's get into some hockey.
And this just made it. As Josh says, Bears ain't looking much better. That just capped off the day. As first I had to watch the Cowboys look like garbage. and then my daughter has to watch the Bears game. And then I went in the other room and I was trying to watch a little bit of the Lions-Packers game. And honestly, that game was not that much better. I don't know if it was just because it was raining and it was kind of sloppy out there, but not a much better quality of game to watch. But the Lions got those white uniforms dirty, like Dan Campbell wanted him to. I tell you what, man, Dan Campbell a couple of years ago when they did that Hard Knocks, I was really on the fence. It's like, man, like there's some things that I buy into, but you know, there's some other things. It's just like this guy, is he just like a hammerhead, you know, like football guy? You know what I mean? You know, like is that what he is? Is he just this dense kind of, you know, hammer-headed football guy? But like the guy is ahead of the curve. Like he goes for it and converts more times on 4th down than anybody. They scored 2 touchdowns against the Packers the other day, both of them on 4th down plays. Like he's hard to argue against right now. You finally got your computer figured out?
I did. All
right.
Sorry to upset everyone.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for tonight. Good therapy tonight at the end of the show. We worked it out.
Watch the rankings, 30 minutes away.
They're coming up. College football playoff rankings. And again, if you're listening on a Wednesday, well, you already know what the result of that is. But Live show, good stuff, lively chat tonight. Vincenzo will be back tomorrow. Jesse will be back on Thursday as we roll on through this week, leading up to Florida State on Saturday, the last third of the season. Jason, thank you very much.
Hit that
Joe,
like
thank
button.
you very much. Hit that like button before you leave. We appreciate
Only for
you
me
once again. And we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.